Well, after a week of standoff between Wits University management and the Student Representative Council, or SRC, the two have finally found common ground. According to a statement issued by the SRC, they were forced to take their anger to the streets following numerous breakdowns in negotiations with management. And we're joined here in our studio by Wits Vice-Chancellor, Professor Adam Habib. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Perhaps I should probably just start with the SRC statement, the fact that you finally found common ground. Is that how you would put it, given the fact that there were demands which you deemed as unreasonable as university management at first?
So let me just say to you what actually happened is we had an engagement towards the end of last year. And one of the things that the SRC said is that they were concerned that people who had historical debt, people who would have problems with accommodation, and the missing middle would not be covered by the Jacob Zuma concession, and could we assist? We agreed to put 10 million aside.
Okay.
We agreed to then increase that to 12 million. We had a set of agreements with the with the SRC. And then suddenly, the SRC breaches that agreement and goes and takes to the streets and says that no.
They accused you of breaching that agreement.
Well, the agreement was a very simple one. That anybody above 50% who had passed with a 50% or more, that had historical debt, that we would use that 10 million to assist them. The demand that they subsequently made is those people below a 50%, between 40 and 50%, must agree to this. So they changed that demand. That demand was jointly agreed to above 50% with the SRC. When they got put under political pressure, then they demanded that we consider those between 40 and 50%. Now, it raises an important question. It raises the question is, if we have limited resources, should we put that to people who are passing? Or should we allow those below 50% to be actually also be privileged in this regard? Remember, the longer you fail, the longer it is that somebody else cannot take your place. This is not about it not having an impact on anybody else. The more people take longer in the university, the more others can't come into the institution. And so I was very disappointed, but you're right. We did then eventually come to an agreement on Thursday. I was disappointed that we had to send in the full security, bring in the private.
Why did you? Because this is the big question about these disagreements, which some would say are ideological disagreements with the students on how to tackle this matter. Why do you become heavy-handed? Because this is the accusation against.
Okay, so let me give you the dilemma. So, for instance, what we have is a situation where we have an agreement. Let's say the students decide to disagree. Let's say they decide to then protest. They then mask themselves at 6 o'clock in the morning, stand in front of the gates, prevent everybody from coming in. Subsequent to that, they march into classes, threaten lecturers, stop classes from happening. They actually throw stones and break infrastructure. You saw what is happening in KwaZulu-Natal. Mercifully, that was never done effectively. It wasn't done at Wits. But what they did do is break desks, break windows, cause thousands of rands of worth of damage, and threaten other students and threaten other staff. Is that peaceful?
Professor Habib, are you failing in your PR? And I'm going to ask you these questions on the basis of what tends to trend. The videos of students that we see where these allegedly private security people are seen to be really heavy-handed. I mean, we've seen some really horrific visuals of students being grabbed, clothes being torn. That's what we see. So are you not using your own security cameras to portray students doing what you say they're doing?
We put all of this out onto the public domain. How is it that none of this gets covered? Why is it that you don't go and interview 32,000 students who get assaulted? When is it, am I going to see journalists in the SABC and ENCA say that in the context of a protest, can we interview the others?
We've tried in the past. We tried. In fact, the last protest, we were prevented from entering the premises.
So can I show you? Come to me. I will show you emails in the middle of 2016 from black students who were poor, who said we are being abused. We actually are desperate to finish the degree. And we are prevented from doing so by a group of people who are actually preventing us from completing our academic year. Think about this. The people who launched this protest are a group of activists in SASCO, in the PYA and in the EFF. SASCO belongs to the very political party that rules the government. That party has made the very policies by which this university is administered.
So is that
they
why,
vote
you,
on
is
the
that
one
why
hand,
you were shaking your head when I said ideological differences?
Yes, well, I'll tell you what the point is. Speak to any vice-chancellor in this country, and the shifts of the demands of the students constantly change from day to day. On one day, it's historical debt. Now, to be honest, is historical debt an issue? Absolutely. Can a university resolve historical debt? In Wits University's case, it's 500 million. The easiest thing for me to do is to concede it. In 2 or 3 years, I'll be gone. I'll look kind of good. And then you'll have the ESCOM saga, a huge debt. The current historical debt of the system is 10 billion. If you don't watch it, and if vice-chancellors are lax and loose, it will be 30 billion, 40 billion. And then we'll be all gone, and the nation will be held accountable for that money.
From year to year, where is the chain that unhinges all of what seems to be an agreement? And I asked this going into this year. It seems like the whole issue about NSFAS, the missing middle, and historical debt was resolved. And then there seemed to be an issue of financial. So tell us, where was it?
So here's the thing. In Wits's case, there was never an issue with NSFAS. We had an undertaking from government that those students with NSFAS, including those with historical debt, must be registered, and we must proceed. The real challenge is the missing middle. Jacob Zuma's concession covered those with a family income of less than 350,000. The rest, the missing middle, is beyond the 350,000. In Wits's case, NSFAS students make up 20% of our student base. 65% of our student base is missing middle. There is no solution to their challenge. Day before yesterday, on Friday, Minister Naledi Pandor passed a resolution that said we must register all final year students, including those with missing middle. As soon as she made that statement, we gave an instruction and said register all missing middle students, even those with historical debt, and we'll sort it out with government. The problem is the challenge of historical debt or accommodation or fees for missing middle cannot be resolved by the university. It's a policy question for the state itself.
When you say you've reached concessions on these issues around the Hardship Fund, how much of that problem is being resolved by that?
In the context of what we did, is we put aside 10 million rand. When that ran short, I found another 3 million rand and was able to
From where?
From university resources. I moved money from other line items and put it in there to try and resolve it. That was 13 million. But the debt is 500 million. I cannot wish that away. That cannot be resolved by Wits University or UCT or Forte or anybody. It has to be resolved by a state or by government itself.
There's so much to talk about, Prof, and I'd like us to get to it. Wits University being seen in some as the birth of the hashtag FeesMustFall. And you question where, through the years, the real problem or the real core of the campaign has been. Some have said it's been politicized. I know at some point, I think IPIT was investigating whether or not there were intelligence agents who'd set up a fund to recruit students in order to offer them bursaries, to change the direction. How much of that politicization of hashtag FeesMustFall is genuine, and how much of it has been playing silly buggers?
So let me say to you, I think that this demand for free education is a legitimate one. I think that we have poor students who are looking to resolve the challenge of going into higher education. I think that started as a noble cause in 2015. I think its great high point was the march on the union buildings, when Jacob Zuma made the concession and said that the fee increase.
But just in 2015, it was also around workers.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
So the first part of that thing was resolved. Then a smaller group continued the strike and said, we want the workers' issue to be resolved. And in that sense, in Wits University at least, we then made a concession to say we will set up a panel to investigate that. And we eventually insourced the individuals. So that was the 2015 movement. After that, there is no doubt that political parties tried to get their clashes onto that movement. And in 2016, it was very party politicized. And that's when it fractured, that's when it divided, and that's when basically the universities became the political football for political parties. Do I think that politics is important for students? Yes. I think it needs to be a noble politics. I think it's a politics that's principled. When it gets contaminated by party agendas.
How was it contaminating? I know you're writing a book about it. It's a tell-all book. Just reveal some of the detail for us. Were people bought? Was there undue pressure from above, from the first office in the country, from the governing party, from other?
I think there was undue pressures from all parties. So if you listen to the interview of Julius Malema on the BBC on the 5th of December 2015, he says, my guys were there and they were there to ensure that this FeesMustFall agenda was carried forward. He mentions names, as did the ANC at various points. There was the accusation of an ANC leader going in and giving money to student leaders. There was all of this. In 2016, I am guaranteed, and the book does describe mechanisms where political parties, opposition parties, who had the agenda of forcing Jacob Zuma down. In November, they had a campaign in Pretoria, and they wanted to use the universities as a platform on which to launch this. If you ask me, the curse of South African universities is the political parties that are embroiled in it. In the United States or France or Germany or hundreds of places around the world, you don't have political parties competing for SRC elections.
Did you ever get a call from the president?
Oh, I have had lots of engagements with the president around the issue of FeesMustFall and how to resolve it. He never ever called me to say to me, act in a particular way at Wits University or act in another way.
I want to focus on the criticism against you as an individual and your institution. Wits University was regarded as a fairly liberal university, forward-thinking in its approach on some of these issues, including curriculum change or at least overhaul. And you, as somebody who was a political commentator, you are seen to have gone almost on to the dark side. Do you feel that getting into the position of VC corralled you into a certain way of thinking about how to resolve this matter? Because you were seen as very hardline and unfair in some cases.
So here's the issue. I took a job. When I took that job, I took a responsibility to the nation as a whole. I said I will run this university to the best of my ability, to keep the academic program intact, to keep it financially sustainable, to increase its research productivity, to increase postgraduate students, to transform the place, to increase access for poor people and retain a quality education. That's what I've done. Look at the indicators for every one of those issues. When students walk in, and when political protesters walk in and threaten other students, when they threaten staff, when they take the position that says, if there is no free education, there shall be no education at all. It is my responsibility as a citizen, as a political activist, and as a political commentator and as a leader to stop that.
Pedagogically, did your ideology change? Especially from being outside of the system to now being inside of it?
I still believe very much in social democracy. I believe in an inclusive society. I believe that universities and a free education is important for achieving that. But what I do not believe is in burning university infrastructure. What I do not believe is in assaulting other students. What I do not believe is threatening lecturers. And please don't sugarcoat this, because frankly, we have seen the most egregious violations of rights of others by those who claim that they represent an inclusive society. Being committed to an inclusive society does not give you the right to threaten and kill
Before we
and
run
name
out
others.
of time, my colleague Stephen Grootes was interviewing Vice-Chancellor Mamokgethi Phakeng yesterday, and one of the things that she was saying, she actually acknowledged you as a support system, as somebody who comes under attack, unfairly so. And are you feeling as if you've come under unfair criticism and attack?
I think that every Vice-Chancellor in the system is under attack. They've got to make very difficult decisions in the context of not having determined the policy themselves. The public institutions don't work. The students are demanding no fees. The unions are demanding increased wages, and everybody is demanding a quality education. These things involve trade-offs. And frankly, the future of our universities is at stake. It is not up to the vice-chancellors to defend it. The nation as a whole has to stand up and say, enough is enough. These universities are important for our future.
The performance of the universities. This is a very important one. As Vice-Chancellor, there's been instances where people or students have failed in chunks, and they're questioning whether if a class fails, say in property law, for instance, 68% of them fail. Is it really about the students, or is it about the quality of the education that they're getting?
I think it really depends on the case study. Wits University produced last year the highest number of graduates in its history, 9,500. Within 6 months, most candidates get a job who are graduates of Wits University. Now explain to me, let's talk real numbers. Let's not play with the rhetoric. When, in 2017, a number of black students demanded on Twitter that the university's assessment processes are anti-black. When I challenged them and said, prove that to me, when I sent somebody in, it was found that those assessment processes were legitimate. I will tell you that our assessment procedures, our admissions procedures are largely in the interests of this country in its inclusive development agenda. And we will not allow individuals who want to bypass assessment procedures to play the race card because it suits them. Okay. That's just unacceptable.
Let's talk about transformation and changing or Africanization of the curriculum. Where are you headed?
So, here's this. When I inherited Wits University in 2013, we were sitting at just over 30% black. This past year, we just increased our academic staff by above 50%. Our black students are 84%. Our administrative staff are 84%. Come and look at the numbers. There is no research-intensive institution in the country that meets better criteria. You want to talk scientific evidence? I'm happy to debate anybody with the actual data.
When is your book coming out?
2 weeks.
And you'll be here to talk to us about
Absolutely.
the content. Thank you very much, Professor Adam Habib, Wits Vice-Chancellor. And that's it for now. We'll be back in just a moment. Let's take you back to Stephen.
Sabiso, thank you very much. As you know, tomorrow the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, will be delivering his budget speech in Parliament. He's expected to announce some kind of way forward for Eskom, some support for various state-owned entities, and the country's